Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Safe Side, a monthly podcast hosted by the editors of Safety+Health magazine, the official magazine of the National Safety Council. This is Kevin Drewley, Associate Editor at Safety+Health. With me, as always, are my fellow Associate Editors, Alan Ferguson and Barry Bottino. Hello, guys.
Hello there, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Doing all right. We're thankful that you all have joined us for our November 2025 episode, number 69 in Show Annals. This month's episode is kindly sponsored by J.J. Keller. Many of our listeners have had a unique journey into the safety profession, and we'd like to hear about it for the My Story feature in our magazine. Please submit a personal story or encourage a safety colleague to do the same by emailing us at safehealth@nsc.org. In this month's episode, we'll examine some highlights from the November issue of Safety+Health and have an expert discussion with NSC Senior Safety Consultant Mike Ezzell covering forklift safety. We'll also share some stories you may have missed in our loose end binding in case you missed it segment. Is everybody ready? Here we go.
The November issue of Safety+Health features our annual salary survey, a collection of data points from EHS professionals that provide a vivid snapshot of the profession. From demographics to education and from experience level to the size of organizations and safety teams, there are plenty of interesting numbers to dig into this month. The survey covers a variety of compensation questions from base salary to bonuses, along with unique questions about how respondents first entered the field, the most and least common benefits employers offer, and the amount of time off safety pros receive annually. Have you or a coworker ever experienced a medical emergency at work? Alan writes about how every second counts when an event occurs. NSC first aid expert Maria Bellin Cordova explains that staying calm, being prepared, and knowing what to do, including when to call 911, can help save a life. Alan's story discusses the know-how you need when a heart attack, stroke, opioid overdose, or other medical event happens on the job. And there's plenty more in the November issue, which you can find either in your mailbox or online at safetyandhealthmagazine.com.
When it comes to EHS compliance, experience matters. That's why 500,000 plus businesses trust J.J. Keller, the industry leader in safety and compliance for more than 70 years. With over 150 subject matter experts, they have the solutions you need to reduce risk and simplify compliance, including technology tools, consulting, personal protective equipment, publications, and training. In-depth knowledge, diverse solutions, superior service. Learn more at jjkeller.com.
Powered industrial trucks, a term that most notably includes forklifts, was once again on OSHA's preliminary top 10 list of most cited standards for fiscal year 2025, which was unveiled in September at the National Safety Council Safety Congress and Expo. With us to talk about forklift safety is NSC Senior Safety Consultant Mike Ezzell. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Safe Side.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about a subject that I think too often employers as well as employees don't take as seriously as they should, as I'm always reminding them the one thing they need to keep in mind when it comes to a forklift. It's a very unforgiving piece of equipment.
Well, speaking of employers and workers, what are some of the biggest challenges for those groups regarding forklift safety?
I think there's actually several. In fact, you were mentioning the OSHA standards and the violations, and the number one violation is failing to train employees. Fortunately, a lot of people, you ask somebody, do you know how to operate a forklift? Oh, yeah, I can drive a car. Interestingly enough, is why when it comes to the training, one of the things we have to cover is the difference between a motor vehicle and this piece of equipment. I think sometimes production gets in the way from the standpoint of more concerned about that than the safe operation. Several years ago, I did training for a company, and as I was observing the operators, there was this automatic door that when they passed a certain point, the door would open and they would go in. So I asked the supervisor, I said, has that door ever failed to open? And he kind of looked down and said, well, yeah. I said, well, watching these folks, And they think that door is going to open every single time as they approach it, being in a hurry, trying to get it done. And when we look at what is taking place in the workplace in 2023, which is the latest year we have statistics on, there were actually 67 work-related fatalities involving forklifts. Mentioned earlier about it being a very unforgiving piece of equipment. When you look at the medium days away restricted transfer duty because of injuries from people operating powered industrial trucks, the average is 22 days, either lost time or transferred to another job. In fact, days away accounts for 18 days on the average. People need to realize how important it is to operate it safely and to be sure that they have been adequately trained. Another aspect when we look at the challenges, and I think this gets into the second area that unfortunately keeps forklifts on the top 10, is not realizing on the part of employees what constitutes unsafe operation. Because OSHA makes it very clear in the regulations, if it is unsafe to operate, it needs to be taken out of service until the issue can get resolved.
What basic requirements are necessary to train workers?
When you look at the length of time that it took, training standards changed. Training has been around from the very outset, but I can remember some people's view of training was, okay, watch this video. Now we're going to go out here. I want you to pick this up, move it over there. Here's your card. They have really, with the standards, spelled out the elements that have to be a part of the training. You can't just use a video. As far as that training is concerned, a lot of different aspects that are there. When it comes to understanding stability in the regulations, they have put an appendix that is non-mandatory, but explains stability as far as the forklift is concerned. It really made a lot of improvement in that particular regard as far as what people are being trained on. One of the key elements in training that I think had been overlooked in the past, and something that I try to remind folks of that they need to remind their folks of, is the hazards that are there in the workplace. They look and think, well, it's the same place. You need to remind them there may be vehicles that weren't there before. They create a hazard. Materials being moved around within a warehouse type setting that weren't there before, and today they are, and not taking the time every day to look and see, okay, what's the environment that I am operating this truck in today? What's different today from yesterday? They really can be aware and alert to the issues that they need to be paying attention to so that they can reduce the risk to themselves and the other people that are there in the area where they are being operated. A lot more specificity as far as training is concerned and the items that are required to be covered in that training.
Mike, with all the various types of forklifts out there today, how do training requirements change for each one of those different types of forklifts?
It's not so much that the training changed for these. The thing that's important is one class. If you got 4 different forklifts that are just totally different as far as the various elements are concerned, maybe the controls, maybe the carrying capacity, those types, it's not that you go through training and you can operate anything you want to. OSHA is very specific in the regulations that they are to be trained on the piece of equipment that they are going to be operating. You will find companies that will have a variety. I've seen many that they kind of create a license. On that license, indicate what that person is qualified. In fact, OSHA uses some what I call pretty strong language when they talk about that operator, because they use the word certified and competent, which means a high level of training that is there. And as I remind folks who are involved in training folks, their name's going on that card. And they need to be sure that they feel comfortable that, yes, this person knows how to operate this piece of equipment. I remind them that classroom and that hands-on training that was done does not complete their task. Probably within 2 to 3 weeks, and 3 weeks at the latest, you need to go out there and watch these people operate that piece of equipment that you signed a card that says they are qualified, they're certified, they're competent to operate this piece of equipment, because I figure about 3 weeks is all it takes to pick up the bad habits that are out there that others are doing.
Mike, we want to know, how is technology playing a role in forklift safety?
That's interesting because there really are a number of things that have been done, including the development of what has the label of automated forklifts, the use of artificial intelligence and so forth, collision avoidance systems that will automatically slow down that piece of equipment or actually stop it when an obstacle is detected. There are smart sensors. We talk a lot about ergonomics as far as the workplace is concerned in the office environment. But even in that area, you're seeing ergonomics being an element in the design where you have adjustable seats, where you have better visibility for the operator, controls that are much more friendly or easier to use than forklift 15 or 20 years ago. Also, just about to miss one real important aspect, and that is the pedestrian detection systems that are there. And this is going back to the challenges that are there for the operator. The pedestrian traffic people, we have designated walkways, but that doesn't mean somebody's not going to go walking across there. I've had people make the comment that, yeah, we had eye contact. I know that person was looking at me and I was looking at them, and they just walked right out there in front of me. Like, okay, yeah, we had eye contact. They know I'm here, but they're in a hurry too.
As we close up with you, Mike, what online resources are available to help our listeners learn more about forklifts and safety?
Obviously, National Safety Council with our training programs that are there, and in the various aspects of programs that we may have. OSHA itself has a lot of resources on their website. And one of the resources that I think that many people miss is actually the manufacturer and the dealer. Resources there for them, the various changes that might be there. Looking at resources with National Safety Council, not only the operator training programs, but injury facts. This is one of those areas where we do keep up with information as it relates to the operation of forklifts. It helps us to understand how important it is that here is a piece of equipment. That operator needs to be very careful, needs to be following the guidelines that are set forth in the regulations within OSHA. Letters of interpretation are another tool that are there to help us in regard to that. People talking with one another, the recognition of hazards is an element that is there to help create that safe workplace.
Mike, thank you so much once again for joining us here on the Safe Side. We appreciate your time and insights.
Thank you.
Our In Case You Missed It segment this month comes to you as we're recording during a government shutdown, but this segment is not lacking in news about safety. To get things started, I'd like to talk to you all about a new white paper from the National Safety Council's Campbell Institute that focuses on how to ensure your company's safety culture resonates more deeply with workers. And the new white paper, guys, is called The Heart of Workplace Safety, Fostering Emotional Engagement for Lasting Impact. And this white paper breaks down 4 key components to making sure your safety culture resonates deeply with workers. And those 4 components are promoting psychological safety, using leadership as a catalyst for internalized safety values, connecting safety to real-life experiences with storytelling, and measuring effectiveness beyond traditional metrics. And those 4 themes, according to the Campbell Institute researchers, They reveal a pathway for creating a truly sustainable safety culture. Alan, I know you're keeping up with things in Washington. What can you tell us about what folks may have missed this month?
Well, if you missed it, we now have a new leader of OSHA, David Keeling, a former UPS and Amazon safety executive. He was among 100 nominees that were confirmed in block. This is something the Senate has done recently, actually the second time that they've done this. In this particular case, it was over 100 other nominees, and it also included Wayne Palmer of the Mine Safety and Health Administration and Derek Bars of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. What the Senate did is they approved a resolution with a 51-46 vote on October 3rd, and then they voted 51-47 to confirm all those nominees on October 7th. And that set of nominees also included one member of the Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission and another for the Federal Mine Safety and Health Review Commission. Kevin, what about you?
Well, first, this one's just briefly quirky. And as Barry mentioned, we're recording during a government shutdown. This one I would say in case you missed it, but you'd have to be ESP Ultra to know that. Just a quick coincidence before we transition that when we recorded our October episode, it actually happened to be on World Podcast Day, which we all thought was interesting. There's a World Day for just about everything. As it happens, to the day we're recording this November episode is National Bosses Day. So if you're really a sleuth, you can go back and see what day on the calendar that was. But just really wanted to briefly point that out. As for the OSH end of in case you missed it, thought it was interesting, something we covered recently, a study pertaining to dirty work. And I'm not talking about the Steely Dan song or the Norm Macdonald movie. It was a recent study out of the University of Cincinnati, and it was about kind of the stigma that's attached to jobs that researchers called, quote, unfavorable or unfavorably deemed by society. They just really had gotten down to it. They surveyed 250 workers in the US and the UK. They had initially given them a screening question, do you consider your work physically, socially, or morally dirty? And then they followed up with more questions to those who said yes, and that included sewage and sanitation workers, police and corrections officers, and butchers, among others. Findings of the study showed that even though this so-called dirty work was linked to burnout, which could give you some lower job and life satisfaction, those who were less concerned about how they were perceived by society had lower emotional exhaustion, therefore lower burnout, because those kind of go hand in hand. So researchers again said it can be easier said than done, and maybe some of you out there might be in these so-called dirty work jobs and can attest to some of what's being said, but some takeaways the researchers gave for employers to kind of lower this stigma were to provide job resources and organizational support, and also to implement some initiatives that emphasize the critical contributions that the workers in these roles make.
Well, is there some news from around the world of safety and health that you think we missed? Let us know by emailing us at safehealth@nsc.org.
Thank you so much for joining us for this month's episode of On the Safe Side. We know your time is extremely valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of it with us, wherever you choose to listen. You can check out any of our past episodes by visiting safetyandhealthmagazine.com/podcast. That includes episode 36 from February 2023, which features information on working in the cold and ladder safety. The original music for this podcast was composed by Steve Maslin. Thank you so much, Steve. And as always, we thank our NSC colleagues behind the scenes who make this podcast go. And a special thank you to our sponsor of this month's episode, JJ Keller. Learn more about them at jjkeller.com. We'll be back next month to have more safety-related discussions, talk to trusted voices from around the profession, and hopefully make you smile a little. In the meantime, please stay on the safe side.